I started ghost hunting at a really young age. I guess it was because I was so curious at what was happening to me. I was able to see spirits, hear spirits, smell spirits. So as I grew older, I just started trying to research, which was very difficult because at the time there was nothing written about ghosts. So I just kind of had to learn from experience. I tell people that I've learned more about life from the dead than I have the living. My name is Patti Starr, and I am a genuine certified ghost hunter. And I've been ghost hunting over 40 years. I've actually been fortunate enough to ghost hunt in 3 different countries and 26 different states in the United States. Now that's not to impress you, but just to impress upon you the vast experience that I've had in collecting evidence that there's a possibility of ghosts and spirits. So hopefully tonight, on the wall, I've brought a few instruments, EMF meters and a recorder, and hopefully we'll be lucky enough to get some type of activity. We don't get it on every walk. I wish we did. But basically, with these instruments, we just might be able to communicate just a little bit deeper with the spirits while we're walking around. We are now standing on the steps of the Carnegie building. But at one time, this was actually the library. And what's really exciting is this was the very first library built west of the Alleghenies. It was actually built in 1905. And it was an operating library until about 1989, I think it was. One evening while I was doing my intro here at the Carnegie Center, right before the walk started, I kind of got some information to look up. Look at me, that type of thing. I did. I looked up. Over in the window in the corner, I could see this man looking back at me, and his mouth was moving as if he was talking to me, trying to give me information. That happens sometimes. That's an indication for me to pay attention. So I broke away from the intro, looked up at him, and I was listening. Couldn't hear a whole lot, but then I told the group that was on the ghost walk, I said, "You're not going to believe this, but there's a man in the window." So they all got up, and they looked, and they could see him. We were very excited, so we all started taking pictures, but I was the only one that actually captured his face. And that's kind of weird. People always ask, how come sometimes the spirits will only appear in one camera? And I think that's just a connection that they have with whoever has the camera. So I took his picture, and then I began to listen and think about the picture, and I got a name. So I went to the computer. It was later, it wasn't that day, but later I went to the computer, looked up the name, and I found his face, and it looked the same. I was really excited because I discovered that the man in the window used to come to the library almost every day to read his newspaper. And I'll tell you more of that story when we get to the Bodley Bullock house. We're going to continue our walk, but I did want to point out one thing. I'm going to ask you to pay very close attention to this. We're going to walk all the way down to the end of this walkway. Once we get to the end of the walkway, we're all going to cross over to the other side. There is a lady that haunts this place, and her name is Minnie. Minnie bought this place. Her and her husband, Waller, bought this place in 1914, and they lived here until 1970. So she was a very peculiar type of personality, and one of her quirks was that there would never be alcohol served in her house. Well, even her husband was not even allowed to partake. So her husband was an orthopedic surgeon. When Waller would get home in the afternoon, he would take his flask, unbeknownst to Minnie, fill it full of bourbon, wrap it in a newspaper, and then he would go over to the library. And he would say to her as he left, "I'm going to the library, Minnie. I'll be there for a while." And he would partake in his bourbon and read the newspaper. Okay, remember earlier when the fellow was speaking to me at the library window? At the time, I didn't know his name. He said his name. I looked it up, And that is Waller coming through. And I think he was saying, you know, for the last 2 years you've talked about Minnie, but you've never really talked about me. So now we can talk about him after we see his picture in the window. And then I looked it up on the internet and it matches. They have to be this or this. If they're over here, it's not going to go off. They're too far.
I think I started out wanting to be able to do something to share my experience with others, but it would have to be something that they could either feel or touch themselves. So I got acquainted with different equipment like the EMF meter, electromagnetic field meter. I started noticing my pictures, and I would capture things in the picture. Different types of anomalies and apparitions. So I thought if I could take some of this and share it, the pictures, that type of thing, then it might open other people's minds into the possibility of spirits and ghosts and fairies or whatever that's out there.
Okay. Can you come a little bit closer? And that way I can... Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, okay, I've got both of you going. I want to make sure I have Minnie with me tonight. Can you validate by beeping once for yes? I tell you what, just beep for yes, do not beep for yes. Okay, thank you. Now, Minnie, a lot of times when I cross the street, you won't follow me, you'll stop. So we're going to cross the street and I'll see if you stop. Okay? Alrighty? Let's go.
Well, to be honest with you, paranormal to me was normal. When I was little, I would have, sometimes at night I would wake up and there'd be a light in my room and I'd look around and there'd be these little kids' faces around my bed. And I remember telling my mom about it. It frightened my mother a little bit and she was like, no, you don't hear voices, you don't see anything, you were probably still in a dream. And I'm like, no, I don't think so, Mama. I mean, these are pretty real to me. And she says, no, I promise you, this is just something it's like a fantasy. I knew then that what was happening was not so normal. So I guess that's why I became more interested in the paranormal.
Now, would you beep out very slowly how many are with us? And please make it very slow. I got 6. So now we're standing at the John Hunt Morgan house. John Hunt Morgan was the very first man-made millionaire here in Lexington and west of the Alleghenies. A lot of firsts for Lexington. Now, John Wesley Hunt was also a slave owner, and he bought a slave, a very young girl at the time. Her name was Bouvier James, and she was asked to be the nanny to the children. And she lived for a very long time. As a matter of fact, when she died, she'd be more like a great-great-grandmother, that type of thing. Now, when John Wesley Hunt would go to market, he would say to Ma'am Bet, was her name, and the little cousins that would come and visit called her Aunt Betty. And he would say to Ma'am Bet, what would you like for me to bring back? And a lot of times it would be a purse, or it would be a parasol, or a hat. But on this particular occasion, she said she wanted a pair of red shoes. And he brought her back a pair of red shoes. And it was noted that she wore those red shoes all the time. And I also learned later that when she was buried in the red shoes. And when we took a picture, we got the red, looks like the toe of a shoe. So we started checking to make sure that no one in the crowd had like a red jacket on or a red purse or anything red that got in the way of the film, and there wasn't.
This is what I hope they take with them. First of all, I hope that I have in some way maybe made things a little more inquisitive for them. Like, could they really be ghosts? Was that voice really from the beyond? And also, it helps us to realize that if we can relate or communicate or embrace this energy that we don't fully understand, I think that it just enriches our lives to be able to learn other things and how important energies are and how energies will work with us on a daily basis.